Welcome to Remodista's Women We Watch film series. Thanks for joining us on our conversation around diversity and inclusion with Lisa, Jessica, and Brittany. So tell us about the conversations you're having in the workplace.
We view diversity not just about race and sex and gender, but also diversity of thought. I think diversity makes people uncomfortable because they're not sure how to attack it, or they feel out of place, or they're not sure how to implement strategies that are actually actionable. So from a tech side, we encourage companies to think outside the box when they're approaching these issues such as fit, course sizing, and all of those different things. So whereas maybe companies thought that body scanners would be a better solution, we're evangelizing peer-to-peer based shopping. We're doing things that require them to actually talk to your consumer, include them in the design process, do things that you haven't done before so that you can get different results. With our brunch, the Women of Color #tech brunch, we are just trying to help companies understand where to source the talent, because sometimes they have a difficult time doing that, as well as teaching them how to listen to the talent when it comes to keeping them in the workplace so that they can matriculate through these positions and not just stay for a little bit to fill the quota and then go.
So how do you make space for others when you're focused on being more inclusive and diverse?
So I think, again, it all goes back to feedback loops, right? We talk about that constantly in the technology space, and it's really important to listen to your customer. I think from the perspective of higher education, or just education in general, I think we've all heard this phrase before, but you can't be what you can't see. And that's often what we hear from students when we go in and we're doing these workshops. The first thing they say is, I didn't know that I could do anything related to fashion with my degree. And that's whether we're talking to biology students, engineers, marketing students, merchandising. We just hosted a workshop about 2 weeks ago in North Carolina. We had students from every discipline, every college on the campus. And we led the conversation with a case study on One Garment, One Child, which is a nonprofit organization that develops mosquito repellent pajamas for children in Ghana. So immediately we have taken their idea of fashion from because I worked as a buyer for Amazon for 5 years, and so now I'm taking your perspective on fashion from this person playing with tulle and glitter, right? Somewhere in a castle, to now we're talking about a social justice issue. We're talking about fashion for good. We're talking about really a global supply chain and how it will impact people's lives, and clothing as an issue of utility, right? And not an aesthetic. And so really just changing their perspective on how they view the industry. It's a huge global industry. And then just showing them examples of how their skill set, again, can solve that problem. And I think if they're able to chase problem solving, rather than looking at these linear paths that they're kind of matriculating into by default almost, I think that would be one great way to attack it, and where we've seen success.
Yeah, I think Lisa's a great example of how you can encourage students. You understand that they have the skills and a curious mind, and they can solve problems. And I think you then need to expose them to the industries in which their skills can be matched appropriately. And I think as far as fashion, there's so many issues with fashion. But when I decided to switch from fashion by itself into fashion tech, I went into a program that was heavily computer science and engineering oriented, so that I could better understand how to just have conversations with those people. I did not want to relearn coding and all that. I simply wanted to know, if I want to solve this problem, I need to talk to you directly on a level you understand and respect, so that we can get me the clothes that fits. Which is, it's a small issue, but it's mine and I like it. And I think that just interdisciplinary study is a big deal, and then exposure is a big deal, and making sure that students understand your skill set would be very useful here. Fashion tech is new, these jobs are new, these requirements are new, but also we don't want to kind of make people feel like they can be pigeonholed into a linear progression for their career. And I think exposure is the best way to do that, by saying, hey, did you know that you could work on an e-commerce team? Did you know that you could do AI, AR, and VR all within this industry if you're interested in it, if you like this? So I just think that exposure is key.
I'll echo that. Before I even built the New York Fashion Tech Lab, I had a fashion tech company that ultimately failed. But I was so passionate about this space that I would hold seminars, lectures to whoever wanted to listen and invite me to talk about the space, fashion tech. And it usually was to an accelerator program, and it was usually a room full of mostly dudes. And at the beginning of the talk, I always love to ask, how many of you are interested in going into fashion tech? And the couple of girls would raise their hand, and the guys would be like, And then at the end of the talk, I'd ask, well, how many of you are now interested in going into fashion tech? And I was always shocked that all the guys swarmed me, and they pushed their way through to talk to me for hours after the session, because just being exposed to it gives them this excitement and an opportunity they didn't even know existed. So, of course, the girls were even more excited, but I think we need to be in more and more rooms sharing these types of career paths and trajectories. And frankly, right now, what's so cool is that supply chain of the future is being built now. Like, we're going from paper and Excel spreadsheets to digitized cyber physical systems with blockchain RFID beacons and quantum computing. That's a massive leap. So if you're getting in now, you can become an expert really easily because it's never existed before.
With the growth of your Women of Color Fashion Tech brunches, what's been your biggest surprise?
I'm going to say how fine everyone looks when they show up. Oh my God, everyone was turned out on Sunday.
Yes, people love to step out. I think for us, the surprise is, even though it's a fashion tech brunch, we get people from all over the industry. Everyone's curious about this space. Everyone's like, hey, what's going on here? We want to be a part of it. We share some of these sentiments. We want to talk about it. We want to learn more. We want to sign up. And then we get a lot of great feedback from companies who are kind of like, we didn't know this existed. We want to talk. We need workshops. And it's kind of like, okay, that's great. It's a pleasant surprise, and it's helped with our demand as well. So people from all over are demanding, like, hey, can you guys do one here? Because we have this issue, or we have that. I think that's always like a joy to find out.
And the different industries or intersections that she's commenting on. So we did the first brunch thinking that we would just be speaking to women that are in retail and fashion. It turns out that over the last year, we've touched the beauty tech space, we've touched gaming, media, PR, and so really everything that's centered around popular culture, right, wants to come and be a part of this conversation, and so that's been really unique to that experience. I would say for me, what's been most surprising is the conversations that happen at brunch, because we're touching so many industries. Women are really coming and wanting to feel heard in their experience of onlyness. So being the only one in this space or this industry, the only gatekeeper, the only one in my building, the only one on my team, wherever they are, whatever they're doing, whatever groundbreaking innovation is happening, they're often the only one in that space. And that's kind of the unifying theme of the conversation and the experience. And so that's been really significant to me, because that was my experience, and I don't think we realized we were curating that, but it's been good.
How can we ignite conversations on diversity of thought?
I would suggest, having smaller sessions where you can discuss that topic in full, and letting people know, like, don't approach this with shame and don't approach it with disbelief. Just come ready to listen, because you can't really appreciate diversity of thought if you're not ready to tune your ears into something that you're not familiar with. And it's okay to not know. It's okay to have other feelings and all these different things, but pull in diverse people, pull in people with different thoughts and ideas, and encourage them to lead a discussion and then ask questions. I think there's so much fear because people don't really want to ask the questions that's in their head, because they're like, should I do research? And it's like, why don't you ask? Like, why don't you ask, and why don't you allow somebody to respond to it, so that in an environment that's a little more supportive, so that we can get the right answers and you can understand where people are coming from, and then we can move on. And I think that encouraging the type of dialogue that's honest, but not punitive, I think would be very helpful. Like, create a safe space where people can maybe write their questions down and then have it pulled, or something where it's like, let's just get this on the table, let's discuss, and then that way we can move on and figure out how to create some solutions.
When or where did you find interest in this topic?
I'll start. So I was fortunate enough to be born as an entrepreneur in the DC tech community, which was extremely female founder friendly. And as a result, I was kind of thrust into the spotlight because they were like, oh my God, you built something amazing. You should apply to Techstars. And the only reason I applied to Techstars is because all of these male founders in the area were harassing me basically nonstop saying apply. And so once I was there, I was kind of shocked, like, who wants to hear me talk? I'm just a mom that came up with some code in my basement with my baby crying in the background, and how did I get here? But once I did talk, I was floored by how many people wanted to hear my story and felt empowered by it and said, I'm a mom, I never even thought of starting a company after having babies, or I'm a woman, or I'm a whatever. It gives people permission when you can see yourself in someone else. And so I think that's the most important thing. And as soon as I recognized that, I was like, I'll talk wherever. You know, if you're sending me, I'll talk because it's necessary.
I would say for me, it really started in the space of education. So I didn't necessarily set out to have the conversation about diversity, but I realized that being in the space of merchandising, I had kind of become a role model to students because a lot of young girls want to be buyers and they see this very like sexy and glamorous career, which it is not always. And so I just saw myself as educating them on the other options. Because again, my background was in supply chain, never thought I'd work in fashion at a fashion company, at a retailer. Like that just wasn't, I didn't know it existed. And so through that conversation, and then transitioning from working in retail to working on a retail business within a tech company in a very white space, I did start to notice, I wouldn't say injustice because I feel like I was in a space and at a company where diversity is celebrated, and we've been lucky to be super supported by Amazon and all of the initiatives that we're starting and doing. But I think I felt the sting of microaggressions, and I feel like the penetrating sting of microaggressions is that they're not malicious, right? It's just they come from a place of ignorance, a lack of understanding, a lack of exposure to people that are different. And so that for me was kind of the intersection that made me say, okay, if I can't necessarily change the course of what I'm experiencing day to day, what I can do is prepare other people for it so that earlier on in their career, they can have the right language to have those conversations. They'll know what's happening to them as it's happening, and they don't have to feel gaslit or confused or disgruntled, right, because of an experience that they're having. I think it was really rooted in just wanting to make sure that people coming behind me had better tools to be vocal, hopefully earlier than I was, because it took me a while to get my footing in the corporate space with that.
For me, it came because I saw, as an entrepreneur, I think you always are trying to solve a problem. And what I wanted to do was solve a problem. However, I was not heard for a long time in my career because I didn't have certain credentials or because somebody wasn't telling me how to do things. So the change happened when I did my master's at Cornell. I was the same person I was prior to that, the same ideas, the same, I had written articles then, I wrote about 30 more articles after Cornell, and the recognition changed and the respect level changed. And it was like, I had to do all that and spend money to go get a degree, excel at this, because Cornell can't teach you how to be smart. They can only take what you have and funnel it correctly, which I'm proud of. But then I was like, how many other people are out here with the ability to solve a problem who cannot be heard, or who are not on the right path so that they can get matched with the problem that they're trying to solve, and all the resources. And that really yielded for me to learn how to advocate for myself and others, and then create these spaces where if you have a great idea and you want to create a solution, like, you need to be heard too. Like, let's go through these processes. Let's not just keep them behind closed doors. Like, let's teach everybody how to ideate, how to solve these issues, how to talk, how to use consumer feedback loops. Because if the goal is to do better, then why are we segregating things off, and why are we only respecting certain people when obviously they don't have the answers either? So I think it came out of necessity. It was like, I just want to solve my problem. And I saw a couple things that made me feel like, oh, this could be a barrier for women, for people of color, for anybody, if you're not in the right place at the right time. And I think that has helped me to champion that issue for everybody.
If you're interested in booking one of these women as a speaker, Or if you're interested in sponsoring our Women We Watch speaker profile library, please reach out to me at kelly@remodista.com. Look forward to hearing from you.